All right, so get ready because today we are going deep into relationships.
Deep, deep.
You know that moment when you're like head over heels and you're thinking, okay, this is it?
Mm.
But have you actually had like the real conversations?
Right, not just the surface stuff.
Not just the do you love me's, but like the nitty gritty that can really make or break things down the line.
Exactly. And that's what's so cool about this Christian podcast episode we're diving
Oh
into.
yeah, tell about it.
It's called 7 Conversations Every Christian Couple Should Have Before Marriage. From the podcast, The Sunshine Inside.
Perfect title, right?
It is like, it lays it all out.
It really does. And it gives you this roadmap for those pre-wedding chats.
Because sometimes you just don't even know where to start.
For sure. And we're talking about like money, kids, chores, even how your careers and your faith play into the picture.
All the big stuff.
All the stuff that can really trip you up if you're not on the same page.
And they don't shy away from the tough topic.
Yeah, they don't. And you know what the first one they jump into is?
Family vision.
Ooh, big one.
It's huge. And it's not just about like, do you want kids or not?
It's so much deeper than that.
It's like, how many kids are we thinking?
Uh-huh. What about discipline?
Yes, values. What do we want to teach them?
How do we envision raising these little humans together?
It's easy to just assume you're on the same page.
Oh my gosh, so easy.
But that's where things get messy.
Yeah, big time.
The Sunshine Inside really emphasizes uncovering those like deeply held beliefs, you know?
Because assumptions, they can lead to some serious conflict down the road.
Oh yeah, years down the line, and then you're like, wait, we never talked about this.
Exactly. And what I thought was really insightful is how they encourage couples to consider their past experiences.
Oh, that's so important.
Like how your own upbringing might shape your parenting approach.
Right, because if you grew up with like a super strict upbringing,
And your partner had like a free-range childhood,
that's something to talk about.
a huge difference. Okay, we've talked kids, but what about career aspirations?
Yeah.
How do those individual dreams fit into building a life together?
That's the next big one. The Sunshine Inside tackles.
And this one can get tricky.
Oh, for sure, because the podcast highlights how much tension can come up if one person's career requires big sacrifices from the other.
Totally. Like think about relocation,
Oh, yeah. Huge.
changing jobs,
Yeah.
maybe even scaling back on those work hours.
It's a lot to consider.
It really is. It's like that age-old question. Can you really have it all?
Right.
Maybe, but it takes communication.
And compromise, lots of it.
The Sunshine Inside really hammers home that finding that sweet spot between individual ambition and those shared life goals.
Hmm.
You know?
It's not about squashing anyone's dreams,
No, definitely not.
but it's about being realistic about how those dreams will impact you as a couple.
You're in it together.
Exactly. And you know what else can cause some serious friction?
Oh, I know this one. Money.
Money, money, money. The podcast calls it one of the top sources of conflict in marriage.
Man, they're not wrong.
Let's be honest.
Yeah.
Have you ever had a money-related stress in a relationship?
Right. And the Sunshine Inside, it's a nail on the head.
What do they say?
Be transparent. Lay it all out on the table.
Debts, spending habits,
Financial goals, even how you view supporting extended family.
all of it.
Because avoiding those conversations now,
That's just a recipe for disaster.
serious resentment, misunderstandings later down the road.
And one thing I really loved about this episode is they give you practical advice.
Oh, tell me more.
Like, they actually suggest setting up a monthly budget meeting.
Really?
Yep, for couples to align on their financial goals. Simple but powerful.
I like that a lot. Okay, so let's shift gears a bit to something more delicate, but just as crucial.
Intimacy.
Yeah, it's easy to kind of brush this one under the rug, especially during the honeymoon phase.
All those lovey-dovey feelings.
But the Sunshine Inside reminds us that getting on the same page about intimacy is crucial for a healthy marriage.
And they bring up this really interesting point about how, like, worldly influences can really distort our views on intimacy.
That is so true. It makes you think, where are those influences coming from?
Right. And how are they shaping your beliefs and expectations?
And how do those match up with your partners?
Yeah, because it's one thing to have your own ideas.
But are you guys on the same page?
It's all about having those open and honest conversations, even if it's a little awkward at first.
It can be.
But creating a safe space where you both feel comfortable,
Expressing those needs, desires, boundaries.
it's so important.
It really is. And it's about understanding that intimacy, it's more than just physical.
So much more.
It's about emotional connection, that vulnerability, building trust and security with your partner.
And that takes time and effort.
Okay, so from the butterflies of new love
Yeah.
to the reality of, well, reality. Let's talk about something that's inevitable in any relationship.
Conflict.
Dun, dun, dun.
It's going to happen.
It is even in the most loving relationships.
But the Sunshine Inside had a really interesting take on this.
Oh, do tell.
They actually suggest coming up with a plan before things get heated.
Wait, a plan for argument?
Not exactly arguments, but like a playbook for disagreements.
So how do you even do that?
It's about agreeing on how you'll handle conflict constructively.
Okay, I'm listening.
So think about, how will you communicate effectively? How will you make space for each other to be heard? What are your go-to strategies for compromise?
I never thought about it that way, but that's actually really smart.
It is, because when emotions are running high, it's easy to fall into those unhealthy patterns.
Totally. You just react instead of responding.
Exactly. But having a plan can help you stay grounded and navigate those disagreements productively.
I love that. And they even suggest having clear steps for seeking outside help if you need it.
Right, like talking to a therapist or counselor.
Okay, now for something that might seem kind of mundane compared to the others, but can be surprisingly tricky.
Let me guess, household responsibilities.
You got it. It's easy to overlook this one when you're busy planning a wedding and everything.
All those fun details.
But the Sunshine Inside reminds us that neglecting this conversation can lead to some tension down the road.
Oh, yeah. I can already picture those passive-aggressive arguments about the dishes.
Right. But jokes aside, the podcast really encourages couples to be intentional about how they'll divide those chores and tasks.
It's about being proactive, not reactive.
And it goes beyond just like who takes out the trash or does the laundry.
Deeper than that.
The Sunshine Inside connects this to societal expectations and gender roles.
That's a good point.
Like they're challenging us to examine our own assumptions about what's fair.
What we think should be happening.
Because what feels fair to one person might feel totally off to the other.
Different backgrounds, different expectations.
It's about recognizing that both partners contribute in different ways.
Absolutely.
And finding a system that feels balanced and equitable for both people, regardless of those traditional norms.
So true. All right, what's the last big conversation?
This one might be especially relevant to you given your faith background.
Balancing spiritual commitments with family life.
This can be a tough one, especially if you and your partner have different levels of involvement in church or belong to different communities.
Different beliefs even.
And the Sunshine Inside really emphasizes protecting family unity, which is such an interesting concept to think about.
It is.
Like, what does that actually look like practically?
Yeah.
And how do you define unity in a way that works for both partners?
Those are big questions.
It's about finding that balance, between individual spiritual practices, church activities, family time.
Making sure your connection as a couple doesn't get lost in the mix.
Right, because it's easy to get so caught up in everything else.
It really is. So having that open dialogue about what those commitments look like, how much time and energy you're both willing to invest.
Making sure you're on the same page when it comes to prioritizing those things.
It's teamwork. You're a team supporting each other's spiritual journeys while also nurturing your shared life as a couple.
That's a beautiful way to put it.
It's about finding that harmony.
Okay, so we've just unpacked these 7 crucial conversations for Christian couples from the Sunshine Inside. But here's what I'm really curious about. How much of this actually goes beyond faith and applies to any relationship?
That's a great point. Like, take the family vision thing, for example. Whether you're religious or not, being on the same page about kids is huge.
It is.
Imagine one person is thinking big family, the other's like, no kids.
Oof, yeah. Recipe for disaster down the line.
Total heartbreak. And the same goes for those career goals. Ambition is great, but you don't want it to be at the cost of your partner's dreams.
For sure.
Respecting each other's aspirations, it's not just a Christian concept that's like relationship 101.
Absolutely. And you know what else I really liked about the Sunshine Inside?
What's that?
It's how they really emphasize being proactive with communication.
Oh, yeah, I see that.
These aren't just conversations you have when things are going wrong.
Right.
It's like preventative measures.
I like that analogy.
It's like you're building a solid foundation.
Before you even start building the house.
Exactly. It's like you're creating this blueprint for your relationship.
Oh, that's good.
You're laying out your values, your expectations, your hopes for the future.
That's something everyone can benefit from.
I think so, too. Now let's talk about finances.
Ooh, everyone's favorite topic.
The podcast calls it one of the top sources of conflict for married couples.
And I'd argue that's true no matter what your income is.
Totally. Money is just loaded.
It is.
And if you avoid those conversations early on, it just builds up.
Resentment down the line.
Big time, and then suddenly you're fighting about something small.
That's always how it happens.
But it's actually about this deeper money issue that you never talked about.
Exactly. The Sunshine Inside is all about being upfront about it.
Yep, spending habits, debt goals, all of it.
And it's not about splitting every bill down the middle.
No.
It's about understanding each other's mindset around money and working together.
Teamwork makes the dream work.
Cheesy, but true.
Now, intimacy, this one's obviously really personal.
For sure.
And how you approach it is going to depend on your own background.
Cultural, religious, all of that.
But what I think The Sunshine Inside gets right is the focus on open and honest communication no matter what.
I agree with that.
They talk about aligning expectations and perspectives, and I think that's key.
It is.
It's about creating that safe space where both people can talk about what they need and want.
Without judgment.
Exactly. And it's not just about the physical side of things.
Right.
It's about that emotional connection.
Feeling seen, feeling understood by your partner.
All right, let's move on to something a little lighter, conflict resolution.
Oh, actually, I think that's a pretty heavy topic.
True, you're right, but it's a universal one.
It is Christian atheist, whatever your beliefs, disagreements are just part of being in a relationship.
They happen, and, I was a little surprised when The Sunshine Inside suggested actually having a plan for dealing with conflict.
Like a strategy.
Yeah, having a way to approach things when they get heated.
I mean, it's not about scripting your arguments or anything. It's
Right.
more about understanding how you deal with conflict and how your partner deals with it.
And having tools to help you communicate even when you're upset.
Exactly, because when emotions are high, it's easy to just react.
Without thinking.
But if you have a plan, you can be more intentional about it.
That makes so much sense, and let's not forget about chores.
Oh, yes, the never-ending chores.
The podcast focuses a lot on this, and it might seem kind of basic.
Me.
But trust me, it's something that every couple who lives together has to deal with.
Oh, for sure. We can laugh about dishes and laundry.
But if one person feels like they're doing it all, it can lead to some serious resentment.
Absolutely. And I love that The Sunshine Inside makes us think about those gender roles that we often just accept.
Like who should be doing what?
Right. Is it always the woman's job to cook and clean?
It's about ditching those assumptions and finding a system that actually works for both people.
Regardless of what tradition says.
Exactly. Now, the last conversation about spiritual commitments, this one might not resonate with every couple the same way.
Depending on their beliefs.
But the idea of prioritizing quality time as a couple, I think that's something everyone can get behind.
Yeah, for sure. Whether it's church or volunteering or hobbies or whatever.
It's about making sure that your relationship doesn't get lost in the shuffle.
It's like putting your own oxygen mask on first.
You can't pour from an empty cup.
Exactly. You have to take care of your relationship first.
So you can show up for everything else in your life.
And that brings us back to that idea of unity that The Sunshine Inside talks about.
Right.
And while they frame it in a religious way, the core concept of working towards shared goals and values, that's universal.
I agree. It's about recognizing that you're a team.
Through thick and thin.
You support each other, you compromise when you need to, and you always try to stay connected.
And have that shared purpose.
That's what makes a strong relationship, wouldn't you say? It's pretty amazing how much practical advice is packed into these 7 conversations from The Sunshine Inside.
It's not just like vague feel-good stuff.
No, it's like tackling those real-life things that can actually make or break a relationship.
And what I really appreciate is that proactive approach. Like, it's not about waiting for things to go wrong. It's about setting yourselves up for success from the start.
Yeah.
Exactly. Building that foundation of good communication and understanding.
And while it's geared towards Christian couples, I really think those main ideas apply to anyone who wants a strong, lasting relationship.
Totally. I agree. At the end of the day, it's about respecting each other and valuing each other's opinions.
And being able to talk openly and honestly.
Those are universal things.
They go beyond any specific religion or culture.
You know what I've been thinking about, though?
What's that?
The podcast focuses on conversations to have before you get married. But what about after you say, I do?
Oh, that's interesting.
Do those conversations just stop, or do they change as your relationship grows and changes?
That's such a good question. And it leads us to a final thought for our listener.
Hit us with it.
Think of these 7 conversations as a starting point.
Okay.
A framework for communication that continues throughout your relationship.
Because life happens, right?
It does. Things change. Priorities shift. We all grow as people.
What worked 5 years ago might not work now. Exactly. So whether you're thinking about marriage or you're already committed, remember that communication is an ongoing thing.
It never stops.
Keep those lines of dialogue open, revisit these topics as needed, and don't underestimate the power of a good conversation.
So well said on that note. We'll wrap up this deep dive.
It's been a good one.
We hope you found it insightful, thought-provoking, and maybe even inspiring.
Remember, relationships are a journey.
not a destination.
And with a little bit of effort and a lot of communication.
You can create something truly special.
Until next time, keep diving deep, keep exploring, and keep those conversations flowing.